Hey everybody, this is the game Sakura by Osprey Publishing. I just want to give you a quick overview and review of this great game by Osprey. There's the name there, Sakura. It actually means cherry blossom in Japanese. And the theme of this game is about following this guy around the garden. Who is that guy? That's the Emperor, and he's strolling through the garden as depicted on this map here and stopping at each of the cherry blossom trees along the way. And there's 3 of them on the map until he gets to the end, and that triggers the end of the game. You as a player are playing one of these guys, a painter. I shouldn't say guys. Males and female painters are following the Emperor around the garden. There they are there. And they're trying to get as close as they can to the Emperor each time the Emperor decides to stop. So this game is all about your relative position to the Emperor when the Emperor finally reaches these different points here on the map, which are a little bit darker than the rest of them so that they stand out and also have those 3 cherry blossom petals on them. So the basic idea is the Emperor is moving along here, but when he does stop, what you're going to look at, and assuming this is a 3-player game that we're demoing here, if they are set up like so, when the Emperor stops, what's going to happen is you're going to move each of these painters all the way up close to the Emperor, and then you're going to score points as indicated on the cherry blossom tree. The closest player will receive 3 victory points, the second will receive 2, and the third will receive 1. And if there's a 4th player, that player will receive 1 victory point. It is actually a game for 2 to 6 players, so I have set aside the other player tokens here that you can see. But for purposes of this review, I have left those out. Now at the start of the game, each of the tokens will be given 5 victory points. So the white player will have 5 victory points, and black will have 5, and the blue player will have 5 victory points. And the reason that you start off with victory points is because you can actually lose some along the way as you play the game. The victory points that you earn in the game are indicated here, and they're just kind of a generic color. And what happens is, as you're moving along in the game, and I'm actually going to show you how that works, it's actually a card mechanic, is everybody will have a hand of 5 cards. And now, while the 5 cards will be hidden in hand, I've actually just kind of laid them all out here so that you can see them. But on the beginning of each round, you'll take a card from your hand, secretly, and you'll place it face down on the table. Everyone will do that who's playing the game, and everyone will then flip them over simultaneously. And what you're going to look for is the number on the lower left-hand corner of the card. The lowest number amongst the players will be the first player to act in a given turn. And obviously the highest number will be the last, and then everyone in between will just flow in to their relative positions. Now if you look at each of the cards, there are 2 icons on every card. The topmost icon will always trigger first, and here are all the different ones. There are lots of them are +1s, -1s, and then there's also a couple of special actions as well, as you can see here with the +2 and the -2 and the green triangle. What the upper number is telling you, it always refers to the Emperor in some way. So this is how the Emperor will be moving with your card. So in case of this card, the Emperor will move -1 space. So the Emperor moves back 1 space. The second number, as you can see here in the red or purple color, that is going to be your particular pawn. So whatever color you happen to be, you'll move that many spaces. If there's a plus or minus, you get the choice. The upshot is you always have to move the full amount. So in the case of, say, having to move, you're right next to the Emperor, and by the time your card triggers, it says +1. If you move and you run into the Emperor, if the Emperor ever runs into you, you have to move back 3 spaces. So in this case, moving back 3 spaces means 1, 2, and then you always skip the other player's spaces in this game. You just don't count them when you're moving. So the 3rd space backwards would actually land you there. And that's how the movement works in the game. Now, as you can see on these bridges, there's actually 3 spaces on the bridges, but you only use those spaces for 5 or 6 players in the game. If you're just 1, 2, 3, or 4 players, you're just going to use that center yellow space. Otherwise, the game would just take too long to play. Now, once the Emperor gets there again, all of the pieces line up. And then you get the points that are indicated. Now I want to just show you before we wrap things up some of the different types of movement that are a little more creative than just moving forwards and backwards in the game. And as you can see here, there's this +2 in the triangle. What I really like about this game is that they've depicted on the card a clue as to how to read that special ability. Of course, you can go right to the rule book and read it and try to learn them. And I just realized very recently that the picture on the card tells you exactly how the Emperor is supposed to move, or how the painters are supposed to move. If you notice that this painter here is actually farthest from the Emperor, it's the farthest painter. So what this +2 is telling you is whichever painter is farthest from the Emperor, that player gets to move ahead 2 spaces. So that's what that card means. Over here, we have a -2. You'll notice that in the picture, this painter happens to be the closest one to the Emperor, and what that -2 is telling you is the painter closest to the Emperor has to move back 2 spaces. Now there's also a few special moves for the players as well, and again that's the second icon on here. Here you have a pawn with an arrow over it. That is telling you that you get to move ahead 1 space in front of the pawn that's ahead of you. So you're just going to jump over them, essentially, and move to the next available space. Remember, you can't land on the same space as another painter. You will actually jump over them to the first free space. And there's one final one here I'll show you, and that is, here's another one. This one, you actually count the number of painters ahead of you in line, and you move ahead that many spaces. So if there's 2 painters ahead of you, you get to move ahead 2 spaces. And that's how the game works. It has a real nice flow to it. Again, you have a hand of 5 cards. You play a card. Everyone's card triggers. Everyone draws back up to 5 cards, and you continue the process until the Emperor runs all the way around the board and ends there for the final scoring. Now, another thing I forgot to tell you, if you do ever run into the Emperor, and remember you have to move back 3 spaces, you also lose one of your victory point tokens if you run into the Emperor. So there's 5 of them provided here, so if you run into him 5 times before scoring, you'll actually have 0 points at the time that you score. And then as you gain points, you'll just grab some of these generics and add them to your pile. And in the final analysis, it's just all about victory points in the end. I think this is a fun strategic game. We've enjoyed playing it, frankly, in a coffee shop, and it has just the right level of strategy and depth that keeps you interested, but also we found ourselves able to kind of hold a little bit of a conversation at the same time. So this is by no means a heavy game, and it plays in roughly 20 to 30 minutes. That's with 3 to 4 players. I imagine it'd be a little longer. I haven't played it with the 5 and 6 players yet, and I actually haven't played it with 2 players. But the game essentially works the exact same way. It's just that there's more points to give out if there's more players. So again, the name of the game is Sakura by Reiner Knizia. That's a big name. You can usually count on his stuff being pretty good, and this one is no exception. Thanks for listening, and I hope you consider checking this game out when you get a chance. And we'll talk at you next time.